Can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you great. Thank you so much for joining us. We are so excited to have you in our little queer Baltimore comic shop to talk about your amazing graphic novel, Simplicity.
I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Mattie, would you mind starting by telling us a little about yourself and your journey into comics?
Sure. So, I'm a cartoonist, and I'm getting a lot of echo on that. Is there any way to fix that?
Amazing. Yeah, I can attest. I was a longtime fan of the Nib, and we still have a lot of the little like themed collections in the shop, which I know once they sell out, it'll be sad to see them go. But we did read Be Gay Do Comics for an earlier month of this club, so folks had gotten sort of a little taste of some of your work before jumping into Simplicity. Yeah. So speaking of, are you able to share a little bit more about sort of your inspiration behind this particular story?
Yeah, so I've been long obsessed with cults, which I think is obvious from reading my book, and I'm also very interested in how people get radicalized and for what purposes, and just that process is really fascinating to me. And there's a lot of that in the weekend too. Um, but for this book, I was really, really focused on political separatism as a phenomenon. I think it's sort of like, like as a queer person, um, all know somebody that's like starting a farm, or know someone that knows someone that's starting a farm, somewhere out in the country, and like this sort of like it's in the air, this sort of like running away. And this is not the first time in America this has been the case. So I was very curious as to like why is this happening? What are the conditions under which this develops? And another really big sort of like crop of separatism was in the late 1800s, like middle to late 1800s in the 19th century. And it was all over New York and Pennsylvania and like Ohio. And it was all these like pre-Marxist socialist communes. Some of them were religious, some of them weren't. But I did a lot of research into these communities, and this book grew out of a lot of my sort of obsession with those things, specifically the Shakers, which we've all heard of. They don't have sex, right? But there's so many more fascinating things about them. Like they, there were so many Shakers that they called them bread and butter Shakers, and they were not like true believers. They were there because it was like sort of like a stable place to live at the time, and you could work and live, and like they were kind of anti-capitalist. And it was this interesting thing where at the development of the it was, I think people thought the world was ending, right? Because everyone's lives were getting uprooted, they were getting moved around. So both the Shakers and another group were the followers of a French philosopher named Etienne Cabet. And a lot of these French, like most of them were like artisans, like middle class people, came over to America and tried to build their version of a utopia from a book that this guy wrote.
And they tried it a couple of times all over America, in Louisiana and Texas, and then later Illinois and Missouri, and then some of them ended up in wine country in California. Um, but I'm just really fascinated by by all these 18th or 1800s groups that were political separatists.
And then what made you sort of want to translate that into this dystopian story of the future rather than having it set in the 70s or even now?
Yeah, again, also like the sort of like artist colonies of upstate New York in the '70s were obviously a big inspiration for this as well. I just it's more interesting to me as a writer of fiction to set something in the future than the past. I wanted to do a speculative work about, you know, separatism and revolution and like what are the ways these things can happen. And I just it was just more interesting to me to set it as a speculative story where I can like sort of I'm very inspired by specifically the works like Ursula Le Guin is probably my favorite author, and I'm also very inspired by there's one Margaret Atwood book called Oryx and Crake that I really
Yeah, absolutely. A few of our folks had to leave early, unfortunately, but one in particular of our club members is currently in their PhD program looking at conservation work. And they were like, boy, this book they were like, I had to keep putting it down, especially the sort of like note-taking portions for Lucius. They were like, oh no, this is too real. I just spent the whole day transcribing my notes from when I was in the field, and now here we are. And yeah, so as you were saying, it's certainly very prescient of the future and the current time and
and I wanted to talk about like history, and I'm really obsessed with museums as well. I in a previous life I actually did work in the museum world as an engineer, and then later at a place that did conservation. But I've spent a lot of time in museums and a lot of time with museum workers, and it's just I wanted to talk about like more of setting in the future stuff was like I wanted to talk about history and how it is recorded and for who and by who and for what reasons and what political motivations. And I think if you are witnessing the stuff happening, then you are witnessing what the end result is in terms of like what goes in the museum, right? Which is like the framing of the book. That stuff to me was sort of like a lot of the main thrust of it that I cracked sort of later on writing it was about like what gets recorded and specifically for who to be the viewer of it.
I did really appreciate that, especially from the start when it's just was kind of fairly early on. He's talking to his friend in the bar, and he's talking about like I guess it's the flashback once he's like knocked out. The kind of the argument that they have about the like who's like the funding does matter, and like even if you go in with this idea of like you want to do something good and you want to like actually make the world a better place, like if your funding is coming from like the evilest of evils, they're gonna fuck you over. I thought that was like pretty relevant, especially to like current day.
Yeah, I mean it's very hard to get funding for anything that isn't like very compromised, and I think it's less of like you can never be involved. I mean, like, this is a book that came out with a major publisher, right? Like Pantheon is very, I don't have any problems with my publisher ideologically or anything, but like it's part of a bigger structure of publishing that's like I have a lot of problems with, right? And like, so it's not to say that like, oh, you can never ever not, if you like, you shouldn't ever. Like, what am I trying to say? Like, I think there's a lot of pressure to be like, oh, well, you can't ever be involved any way at all, anything that's even a little bit compromised. You can't move through the world that way. But I think it's just important to be cognizant of who wants me to do this thing and for what? Why are they giving me money? Like, why? You know, it's not. There's never a time where the ultra wealthy were just giving out of the goodness of their hearts, right? I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of talk about like the there's no like ethical conception of capitalism kind of stuff but at certain levels, like what kind of Lucius was going, like at the level Lucius is going at, it's like you kind of do have to think a little bit about like why do they care so much about this project, like really,
Yeah, exactly.
like what's their like actual end goal, and sadly, obviously, the end is depressing a bit, but yeah, I had a question both about this book and your previous book, so Red Boys Weekend. You seem to have a constant theme of everything ends in flames. Because like Boys Weekend ends with, you know, them on the boat leaving and everybody else kind of dies. And is that just like something that you kind of like to do? Is that, do you think it's just that's naturally where those stories ended up, both in like Simplicity and Boys Weekend, or?
Right. So I think Boys Weekend was sort of like, that's like explicitly an exercise in like final girl stuff, right? So it kind of had to end that way. There was no like. Okay, so there's an incredible, you know, it's like 6 volumes, and one of the volumes is just Tokyo exploding, like 300 pages. And I think about it all the time, that the guy drawing it spent probably a year of his life just drawing Neo Tokyo exploding. So I got off kind of easy.
That's fair.
I would love to, since we were chatting about the ending a little bit, we had sort of a bit of a, I don't know, debate, I guess, about the almost like epilogue of the story, the years later, and sort of what folks interpreted. But I would love, is there a particular way that you're hoping it's interpreted, or a certain message that you would like folks to get?
I mean, so there is, I guess there is like a correct answer for what happened, right? I'm not particularly interested in like just saying what it is. I want to be a little more interested in that. And leave a little bit of ambiguity there, right? But I think if there's a message for the book, to me it's, you know, if you want something, you want change in the world, you want anything, you have to fight for it. You know, you have to. You can't. I think like that is a misunderstanding of power. To just go off into the woods with your friends, or to just go. You know, and this is me thinking about these separatist movements. I think it's a misunderstanding of power that you can go somewhere and found your own society and say, oh well, everyone will see how cool our new town is, and then everyone back home will rearrange how their town looks to look like ours. I think that just fundamentally misunderstands how political power is both built and maintained. So yeah, there's like a message. It's, if there's a future you want, you have to fight. You have to do something about it.
I love it.
You mentioned like throughout the book a few times, there's like the different states, and there's like the different kind of setup, and that the United States is kind of just broken up into a lot of these different kind of smaller countries. It sounds like and feels like. Would you be interested in like returning to the world at all, and like just like completely separate, but like just similar like time period, similar universe, but just now we're in California, or now we're in Utah or Colorado or something.
San Fran.
The Los San Frangelis security territory, which is a joke I ripped off wholesale from Demolition Man. Where the joke in Demolition Man, I think, is in San Diego and Los Angeles have merged into one big city. But yeah, like to me, it's just like California's a whole right? Yeah, I haven't thought about coming back to it. I feel like I did a little free comic book day book, like a floppy. It's like set around the same time, but in space. It's like a very stupid little horror story. That's set in the same world. I think about all my work kind of being set in the same timeline. So there is like technically everything I'm doing is all in the same place. Like the company that the Jeff Bezos guy with the big house upstate in this book, the one that he owns is like on soccer jerseys that one of the guys in Boys Weekend is wearing. Like it's all like one big thing to me. And the book I'm working on now is set like 10,000 years in the future, but in my mind it's all the same, like the sort of like cinematic universe timeline of where I think society is going to go, But the idea of returning to the same world and the same time is not anything I've thought about, but now I'm thinking about it. That is quite interesting, actually. So thank you.
I was just curious because you set up like kind of like just snippets of like, oh, there are other like places that are doing it somewhat similarly, somewhat different. It'd be interesting to like see what kind of message or like moral you can give like in these different places in the same time.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I wanted the world to feel, I think there's a real world-building-itis in a lot of science fiction and fantasy right now, where everything has to be explained and everything's got to be, there's got to be a wiki, everything's got to be completely explained 100% of the way. And that's just not how I like things to be. I wanted the world to feel sort of like big, and you can't possibly all know it from one story in one place. So I wanted it to feel like you could go somewhere else. It would be a completely different kind of thing. So it makes me happy to hear that there is there is more to explore maybe.
Nice. Yeah, it gave the energy of like how like all the like completely different medium, but like how Fallout has like all of their games like are technically at the same time, but they're like completely separate, completely different things. And that's kind of the energy I felt with like this book.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I think I think a lot about the China Mieville, the story set in that one world. I think called Baz Lag. That's like produced Street Station and oh boy, the Iron something. He's got like 3 books that are also the same world, but they're like completely different. So yeah, maybe I'll read it.
I'm curious, given that you have shared with us that kind of all of your work is set in the same world, if there's any through lines from your previous work that you deliberately pulled into this book that we might look for on a second read through.
Yeah, I think it's just like there's there's a lot of stuff that's like stuff from like the graveyard of ideas of things that never got made, like an old book pitch I had, an old TV pitch I had, that all sort of like ended up in here. From Boys Weekend, it's stuff like there's a couple of like companies you see, advertisements, things like that. But nothing like too concrete. It's just in my brain, sort of like, if the world continues decaying at the same rate, Boys Weekend is 10 years from now, and this is 50.
I can definitely see that world ending up in this world, like from having read both. Yeah.
Not a deep question, but I love a good spooky, icky monster. How did you come up with your like monster creatures? I love them.
Oh, thank you. I really, that was like maybe the hardest stuff of this book. You know, so so there's like three monsters in the book, right? And the big green fella, who in the script is simply called Big Sexy. That so the first encounter Lucius has with that guy with the deer head was actually the genesis of the book. Was I kind of just had that vision. I was like upstate. It was in upstate New York, and I was in a hammock, and I was like staring at a tree in the sky, and I just had this sort of like. I'm trying out a new thing where I say having ideas is like receiving an ecstatic vision. So I received an ecstatic vision of that vision Lucius had, and I kind of worked the story around it, like who's this guy, why is he seeing this, like it all just sort of came out of that like visual hallucination I have for some reason. So that one was kind of easy, and in the original version of the book, of the writing, it's a deer's head because it was like, there was a mounted deer head on the wall, and he sort of like crawled out of it, and then left behind a big sticky hole in the wall for Lucius to crawl through, where some other stuff happened. And then as I got into it, I realized that the people of this commune, there's no way they would have a deer head on the wall. Like, you know, they're vegetarians. So I kind of scrapped it, and he ended up being sort of like a tree deer thing. And then the big purple fella, whose name is Big Nasty in the book. That sequence where he kind of tears off his own head and the eyeball pops out. That's actually how I generated how he looked. I just kind of like kept drawing him mid-transformation until I got something interesting. The other monster was like, I think what's he called? It's called Chauncey, I think. Was sort of like, that was a tough one. I drew a lot of versions of that. There was a point where it was like a living like wolf thing that kind of turned into that thing. But then I got to a place that was sort of like, you know, what's really scary is what if it was all mouths? What if the whole thing was a mouth? It was sort of like a big frog almost in my mind. But that one kind of came out of just like, I really like drawing tentacles and eyeballs and a lot of teeth. So it just sort of generated itself out of that.
It sounds like we have maybe a question from someone watching online. Okay. Can you... Perfect. So Kaylee said, I'm sorry, I recognize their icon. Kaylee says, not book related, but do you have a favorite piece of art on the wall behind you? Because you and your home look so lovely and rad. I have personally been very distracted by the animorphs.
Yes.
I also
Okay. So did you know that the guy who did the original covers sells very high quality prints of them online? Like he's like an Etsy shop. So that was a birthday present for my wife, and I'm in love with it. It's very important. It's actually kind of, I was a huge Animorphs fan, but that one is from a book that was kind of after my time reading the series overall. But it's an incredible one where they like break into I think a meatpacking plant as cows, and I love actually it's very important to me. So probably that, and then the Hillmap plant swans that are over there. My pointing is there. It's just if you're not familiar with Hillmap Clint, she was a Scandinavian painter and like mystic, and her work kind of sat undiscovered in a trunk for like 50 years, and then got rediscovered. And there was a couple of years ago, there was a mapping of her work in the Guggenheim, and that swan painting, I stood in front of it for maybe 45 minutes not moving, which doesn't happen to me too often with fine art at museums, but it just really spoke to me for some reason. I'm really in love with it, and I actually have a tattoo of it also.
That's awesome. Sounds like we maybe had another, which was also, please can we see the plushies? Which I can see it's fine.
Yeah, that was the one I was getting.
So we've got the This Is Fine Dog from my buddy KC. We got that's the Dinosaur Comics T-Rex from a long time ago, which I got from I had a long time ago, a friend of mine worked at Squishables, and I went in there, and they let me take a bunch of stuff. So I got that, and I got, can you see it? It's over there. I got that. It's the Yorick skull from when Ryan North did the, what was it, the Hamlet Choose Your Own Adventure book. Those are the only plushies in my house. They're all here.
I love Ryan's Choose Your Own Adventure Shakespeare books.
They're very good. Ryan's very good.
Yeah, agreed. So we sort of start our club usually with like an icebreaker question related to the book. And so this time we asked folks what sort of surprising thing would not be allowed in their personal utopia. And so we got everything from like pineapple on pizza to like specific named coworkers who were but I would love, is there anything that you know you would not, beyond the sort of like, a lot of us have similar world outlooks where there's a lot of things that wouldn't be included that we sort of knew was the baseline, and then going from there, what sort of specific thing?
Really good question. I just feel like if you're going to be living at the commune where you're doing like subsistence farming, someone's going to get.
Space for a better green.
Yeah, like come on, like there's so many. Like try to grow some like little gem or something.
Give us more Brussels sprouts.
Yeah, Brussels sprouts do hit.
I want to know what your favorite character was.
Oh god, here's the real problem is I forget some of the names of the background people because I wrote this book 2 years ago. What is their name? The head priest that is not the head of the commune. I think obedience is her name. The really enormous trans woman. She's my favorite. I love drawing her. It was very sad for me to kill her. Normally I don't get too attached to characters in terms of like if someone dies or whatever, but it was actually very sad for me to draw her dead. But yeah, she was my favorite. She was big and brassy and tall. It was nice. Yeah. She had a cool haircut that I liked drawing.
So was it a process of lots of years trying to get it published, or was it like doing all the art, doing all of the drawing, doing all of the kind of filling?
Yeah, no, I sold the book 2 years ago, and it took about a year-ish to draw, and then traditional publishing takes a very long time for them to print the books, and excuse me. So just from when I finished this book to when it came out was about a year. So I finished drawing the book in about a year and a half.
I think that's actually kind
Yeah.
of standard a year. I think a year is.
Especially for full color graphic novels, they're printed overseas and then they have to sit on a boat for a long time to get here.
Yeah.
And that's there's like a lot of sort of involved like pre-press work, making sure people are right.
2 years sounded fast.
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of
have no frame
stuff now
reference.
around
Yeah.
like tariffs and where the paper comes from, and then getting the paper to the print. Yeah, there's all kinds of fun things. But yeah, I feel like a lot of the folks we've talked to have said, especially for full color graphic novels, that it takes solidly that long.
That makes sense. I just have no frame of reference for logistics.
Yeah, for sure.
I have so many other questions. Anything on the cutting room floor that you wish you would have been able to like put in the book?
Oh yeah, there was there's the book that they're all reading in the book. There's like it's the book like the simplicity is from like the utopia they're trying to build. I wanted to include a chapter that was a bunch of that book and illustrations from that book. you see one of the monster, the lamentation, but I was like, I can't. This book cannot be 300 pages long. It'll kill me. And it just sort of wasn't adding anything to the story, but it was. I wanted to just sort of like set the mood of the thing. I was thinking about maybe opening the book or closing it with like a bunch of pages of this thing, or using it as an interstitial or something. But it just sort of. I think thematically for me, the museum was hitting harder, and then I just sort of. I also worry about being able to draw in a way that's not recognizable as my style. So it just wasn't working out. So I ended up scrapping it. But one day I'll write the whole book.
I was gonna say, would you be willing to like write the meta book inside of the universe, they're like Bible?
The real problem with it is that I think canonically it would be kind of bad and boring, because it's a very didactic work of like there is again this group, the Spiritual Association of Peers, is very much based off of the Shakers one and the Acarians too, and the Kabay people, the Acarians. There was a book that they were trying to reconstruct Utopia from, and it's called Travels in Acaria, and I tried to read it, and it is the worst book ever written. It's really, it's translated from 19th century French. And there's not a huge demand for like a well-written version of this book. So I don't know if it's a translation or what, but it's very didactic. It's very like this guy walking around an island that's perfect, and just going like, and here's how they do clothes, and here's how. Which pretty cool.
It's so funny to mess around with,
Yeah.
especially in your art style. I can see that being a very fun way to like mess around.
Yeah. It would have been fun to do, but I don't think it would have fit very well into that.
I think it'd be interesting to see that page recreated in like the museum, rather than seeing the original page. Have like the little, maybe the book in a case next to it, and then see the recreation of the recreation. Anyway.
I do love when they do that. And they'll be like, "Oh, we made it out of clay, but this is what it would have looked like."
Right, and it's terrible.
Right, yeah. You could make just girthy ass dogs pulling your cart. I love it.
Maybe they would look like large rodents or something instead of dogs. I don't know.
Yeah.
Picturing like Tibetan mastiffs. Mattie, can I ask what you're most proud of from this book beyond the fact that it exists, which, as you said, was years of hard work and is certainly no small feat, but...
Maybe I think the thing I'm proudest of is I got a lot of nude trans people in there, and it's now they have to put it on the shelf at the Barnes and Noble.
Yeah.
It feels nice to me that like I don't know. I just sort of like and it's been something I've heard from people that's been really nice. Is like, oh, there's just a lot of different kinds of bodies in this book, and there's not a lot of attention drawn to it. It's just sort of like. Yeah, here they are, and so I was really proud of getting all that transsexual sex in the book. It was very nice for me to do. It was important. It became like very important to sort of like the themes of the book to me to have it in there. And then I was happy I was able to get it on the page without. I basically got no pushback about it from anyone at my publisher, which was really nice.
We did explicitly say that in our earlier discussion, like somebody who had to leave but said we really enjoyed all the different bodies that were in the, what do we call them, Orgy Fight Club?
Yeah.
The Orgy Fight Club.
I mean, that was my favorite stuff to draw in the book, was the couple of pages of Orgy Fight Club. It's just really tremendously fun to draw people fucking, and it's very fun to draw people fighting. So doing it at the same time, the same panel, was kind of a blast. My favorite character in the book is the guy who's playing guitar during all that. There's one guy wailing. He doesn't have a name, but there's one guy just wailing on an acoustic guitar in the middle of people like fucking fighting all around him. And I really love him because that's true to life. We've been anywhere with anybody because they love. Someone loves to just show up with a guitar.
It's 60.
You maybe planted a little seed, but are you able to share any information about upcoming projects you have?
Oh yeah, so it's been announced. I'm penciling it. It's written. I am about halfway done penciling the next book. It'll be out. I don't know, 2 years. So look out for it. But it's the working title is called Between the Collapses. It's also coming out from Pantheon. And it's a little goofier. The Simplicity's got a lot of heavy stuff in it. There's a lot of like big ideas that I'm trying to cram into it. So I think the next one was a little. I got a lot of big ideas in it, and it's about like. It started out as a book that I was like, I have a lot of big ideas about societal formation, but it ended up being. I mean, the original title I was pitching it with was 10,000 Year Dyke Drama, which they didn't made. Happy with that. It's called Between the Collapses, and it's like the elevator pitch for it is kind of like. What if you and your girlfriend had a bad enough breakup that you stole her car? But what if the car was a time machine?
Sam's just behind the scenes writing.
It's incredible.
Yeah. The last one was Mattie found the worst book ever written. You were talking about the cult guidebook. I love it. Have you had a chance to read any comics or graphic novels lately that you've been loving?
Oh boy, have I read any comics lately that I've been loving? I actually am allergic to reading comics while I'm penciling. I really try to not do it. Because I'm very scared of biting panels or layouts or whatever. So the sort of like 6 to 8 months where I'm penciling, I kind of take off and reading comics. And I also this year, due to some family stuff, I did Miss SPX, which is normally where I go and like load up for all my new comics for the year. So I'm like woefully behind on my comics reading. What did I read? I'm like looking at my bookshelf. Oh, I really love lately. I was going to say Katie Fricas's Checked Out. I really liked. Katie's very funny. And it's like a memoir about working in a library, which I quite loved. I've picked it up but not read it yet. Ben Pascore's new book, obviously. Black Arms Don't Hold You Up. I'm just such a huge fan of Ben's. And I'm sure it's great. I just need to sit down and read it. But I've been a fan of his work for like a decade. And what else is on my looking around my actual room here, sorry.
If it helps, I would say 70% of the time when we ask this question, they're like, I don't know, let me go look at what's on my shelf. And/or I was going to say if there's anything you're excited to read.
I haven't picked it up in print, but I've been reading it online. Evan Dam's Third Voice webcomic is so good, and the first volume just came out. I think in print, it's self-published, but it's so good. And I recommend it to everybody.
Nice. Well, you certainly don't have to, but do you have any questions for us?
Oh God, not that I can think of. I really appreciate all of you taking the time to read it and those questions.
Thanks for writing it. Yeah, thank you for writing it. Thank you for making time to be here. And yeah, no matter how much we enjoy a book, when we all come to the table, getting to talk to the creator always adds more elements, more depth, and allows us to better appreciate all the parts of the story. So we greatly appreciate you and your voice, and we're excited for things to come.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Mattie. We really appreciate you.
All right. Have a good night, y'all. It was nice to meet
You too.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you.